Oh, we're live, David.
All right, thank you, Josh Miller, Prince of Dorn. Welcome to the Season 6 finale, a special jaw-dropping edition of Essos2Westeros with the man himself from down south, Josh Miller. I'm Dave Leno. Well, Josh, 60 episodes through the Game of Thrones series, and we get a big one here in 610, The Winds of Winter. How are you this evening?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm great. But let's get some business done first. Our presenting sponsor tonight is UPS. What can Brown do for you? And also Capital Grill for the finest filet mignon in the land. Visit capitalgrill.com. And also for the best chicken fingers, visit Huey Magoo's in Central Florida. All right, Josh, now that the business is out of the way, let's go through them. 110, season finale of Season 1, Fire and Blood. 210, Valor Morghulis. 310, your favorite, Misa. 410, The Children. 510, Mother's Mercy. And 610, the episode that just aired, Winds of Winter, once again directed by the gentleman who directed last week's episode, Miguel Sapochnik. I clapped many times. I whistled numerous occasions. I did not give it a standing ovation, and I'll reserve that comment until a little bit later on in our Essos2Westeros program. But the way I want to format this one, Josh, is I want to take it piece by piece, okay? So we'll start at the beginning. You and I made some bold predictions. We're going to hold off on them and take it as we go throughout the episode. Let's just start with the beginning because I thought it started with a different tenor than other episodes have in this series, especially with the music selection. Okay? The episode started at 9:03 was what I call the tease or the preview to this week's episode, but also doing some flashbacks from the entire season 6. After the open, it started at 9:05, ended approximately, 10:14 Eastern time. So in total, we don't get the 69-minute episode that we were promised, I guess, if I'm doing the math correct. Am I right on that?
Probably.
Okay.
We never get full 16. We never get really what we promised, but maybe we won't get the prince who was promised either. So.
All right, well, let's begin where tonight's episode commenced. And they had to do a lot in this episode because you got to remember that from what we're told, this was the end of the 10-episode run per season. From what we know, there are going to be 2 seasons left on this series. But bear in mind that they're not going to be 10-episode seasons to come. They may be 6, they may be 7, they may be 8. I don't think it was formally announced yet. So, am I right on that?
Right.
Just
well,
clarify for me.
We talked about it was, at least the way I understand it, it's not going to be like, they'll be split up. So there'll be like 6 or 7 and 6 or 7. But supposedly it's going to be like 6A or 7A and 7B.
So like we saw in The Sopranos was a great example.
Right, but I think the point, especially in this story, because this is a much more narratively driven story, is that it's not going to be a beginning, a middle, and end. A beginning, a middle, and end next season. There'll be kind of like a beginning, and maybe we'll be stopped like in the middle. So we're not going to get like the full ending. You know, in other words, it won't be like the full narrative arc. That's what I'm guessing. I'm sure the show will do that, but I'm just saying, like, you have to keep that in mind that the next season is really only half of the season.
Right. So they had to do a lot in this episode to get us ready for those 2 shortened seasons to come, which will likely end the show on HBO. And I can't wait to see the numbers from this episode on this Sunday night when we're airing this live Essos2Westeros program. So it begins, Josh, with a very long and very different musical interlude, or overture, if you will, coming into this episode, Winds of Winter. and it begins at King's Landing, and we start with the trial of Loras Tyrell, supposedly Cersei Lannister as well. Now, when the episode started, I thought, when I listened to the music, okay, and I'm going to really drill it down here, I have not heard music like that on this show with I believe it was a piano overture. Okay, I have not heard that on the show. I've heard different kind of orchestral music. This was a little bit different, and I say that because they wanted to set the stage for us, the viewer, that we were about to see something entirely different from what we've seen before. So I dug it. I liked the beginning where there really were not any lines except for a few in and out when they were going to the High Sparrow. Then they cut away to Tommen, and then they cut away to Cersei Lannister, and then they cut away to the Sept of Baelor, which I thought was a beautiful set. So I thought the way it was directed from the start, I think they could not have done any better. Your take on the beginning?
The beginning might have been my favorite part of this episode. It was really good. I loved the music. It just carried the whole thing through, and the explosion.
It mirrored like a lot of we watch like The Leftovers on HBO. You watch a lot more shows than I.
Wow, slow down there. It's no Leftovers, okay?
Okay, no, but I'm talking like just like the impact of the music has been so integral to the show. I don't know if it felt that way for you, that it just was a different score that we've seen in the past on the show. You know, on the show we have themes, right? We have the Winterfell theme, we have the Lannister theme, we have the Dorne theme, we have the Daenerys theme. The list goes on and on and on. This was done purposely for this for this show, for tonight's episode.
Sure,
and
well,
I thought
to carry the music theme throughout to the not just the explosion, but all the aftermath after the explosion. I mean, we can go into Pycelle and the explosion, all that, but they really wanted to build it.
And I'm probably mispronouncing the guy's name wrong, but it's like Raymond Dardwani or something like that. He's the guy. He's the musical director of the show. And if you haven't like listened to any of the CDs or just YouTube some of the songs, pretty good. I mean, you can tell that there's a lot of work behind it, and I believe they're all original scores. So credit to him and the music department. Obviously, a lot of money thrown at the show. So the way the show opens, just as I diagrammed, we're cutting away to different spots of King's Landing. So we see the beautiful set of Sept of Baelor, which the show did a miraculous job. I thought the set design and the pre-production just to build that set. I loved it, especially when they were the different camera shots when they were going, obviously just basically like a one shot right on the High Sparrow. Then they would have like a high shot up top, which I don't think we saw maybe in seasons past.
I was gonna say that's not a new set. We've seen that.
No. I'm saying the set is not new. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I love just the shots that they grabbed in that particular scene when they went to the Sept of Baelor. I loved. So, but when they were cutting to Cersei and they were cutting to Marjorie and then Loras, and then when the Faith Militant comes in, drama was building, and you knew that what was about to hit the fan. Something was about to go down. Okay? So immediately I was like, great, we're going to get right into it, because I didn't think they were going to do a cold open here, obviously. For those that don't understand what a cold open means, instead of going right to the opening of the show with, when they're, the elaborate open where they're going to, they're showing different kingdoms in the whole show in Westeros and Essos. We saw in the one episode with the Hound where they show the village first and then they roll into the open. So they don't do that here. They go right into the open. I love the build up to it. And then when we finally get, besides the guy coming into Tommen and saying, all right, hey, the trial's about to begin. Our first real big dialogue exchange comes at the Sept of Baelor with the High Sparrow and Loras Tyrell. I loved it. And I thought when one of the Faith Militant draws the sword at Loras Tyrell, some may say, okay, he was about to get whacked right there. And then obviously what happened is what do they call that? They carved the symbol of the Faith Militant.
I don't know what they call it. I didn't think he was going to get whacked, but I mean, they just branded him. I didn't think he was going to get whacked.
Okay,
right.
They branded him. But that's something that Marjorie Tyrell didn't think would happen. She probably assumed that she would just be, or her brother would be kind of left alone, and even though he would drop all his titles and all his lands and all that good stuff. I thought that particular scene was done really well. And then I also thought to myself, okay, we see Sir Gregor stopping Tommen from going there. That gave me another inkling that, yeah, there is something about to go down at that Septa Baylor set. Two thoughts of mine there, Josh, and I'll get your take on it in just a second. Number one, and which happened, was they were trying to protect him. Number two, maybe Tommen's life was going to come for an end in his own chambers. So, with that being said, that before we get to the wildfire stuff, let's just take it for what we saw from Loras and then Tommen. I want your reaction as you're watching that live, from when it started up until Loras gets branded.
Right. Well, I thought the moment that Cersei was putting on her it almost looked like battle armor, I knew she was going to war, because it wasn't her normal. Like, normally, she dresses more like a lady. She wears a lot of dresses, very long, very feminine dresses. And this was a very, it almost looked like armor, and they were putting the, I don't know what, so it was like it was like a chain, almost like around her neck. So right there, it looked like she was going to war, something was going to go down. I thought Tommen was going to be killed by the mountain right there. I didn't know. I don't know why I thought that, but I just thought that he was going to die right there. And then, obviously, that didn't happen. He was just holding him off. But they really tried to build that. In terms of the Loras thing, I thought they dragged that out a tiny bit. Like,
I thought he was going to get going in. I'll just say this: going in, I don't think I told you this as one of my predictions, but I thought going in that he was going to get killed.
Well, he did get killed.
Right, not by the wildfire,
right,
but by the Faith Militant or by somebody else.
I didn't think they were going to kill him, because at that point there was no reason to kill him. He confessed. There's no reason to kill him, especially publicly like that. So I did not think they were going to kill him. I thought they were going to brand him, just like they branded Loras, because last season I remember the same thing happened with Loras. Can we just kind of give an obituary to the Faith Militant? Like, I know we want to talk about the wildfire and everything, and maybe once we talk about the wildfire, we can talk about the Faith Militant. But I really want to talk about the Faith Militant and their role in the series and everything, because I think that's an important thing to talk about. So I don't know what you,
my friend.
All right, well, we're not at the wildfire yet, where the Faith Militant are actually killed. However, I still don't understand how the Faith Militant, like, even up to the very end, they're holding all the citizens back in the Septa Baelor, and my only thought is, how are these people still in charge? Supposedly, Mace Tyrell, the Tyrells have one of the biggest armies in the world. The Lannisters supposedly have the biggest armies in the world, and they've been able to be stunned down by these rent-a-cops with billy clubs. I mean, it just makes no sense. I think that literally from start to finish, the Faith Militant, like, the ending was very cool, but the Faith Militant made no sense. Like, I wish I took notes, because I was just thinking so many things in my head at the time. Like, how are these people in control? Like, how are they still able to keep Mace Tyrell, one of the great lords of this world, at bay? Like, doesn't he have guards around him? Doesn't he have, like, it just doesn't make any sense. They've never really proven that the Faith Militant have any power in the city other than to say, oh, yeah, they have power. It just never makes any sense. Also, I know we're not at the wildfire thing yet, but there never seemed to be a real payoff to the last time we saw Marjorie, when she was talking to her grandmother, and she gave her a picture of a rose to symbolize that, at least the way I took it, that to symbolize she's still in on the game. She's still part of the house. But it never paid off because Marjorie died. So we never actually got to see her, like, actually tricking the Faith Militant. I don't know. It just seemed like to me, the Faith Militant was a bad storyline, and it should have been killed off a while ago. But, I mean, the payoff was cool in the end because of the explosion. But, for everything we had to do to get here, I was not a fan of the Faith Militant at all. I thought they were a really poor plot point for the story.
Yeah, they dragged out the conflict in King's Landing, and that was definitely something I totally agree with you that could have been subsided a couple of episodes ago. And I think if you just take it for what it is on the surface, total agreement. How do these guys in the Faith Militant really have the whole kingdom by their command? That really is something where that you have the Lannister army. You mentioned the Tyrell army, even though Mace Tyrell's kind of a wackadoodle Smith. But I think, and you said it, when Marjorie gives the rose thing to the postcard thing, or I don't know, the little drawing to Olenna, you're thinking, okay, maybe she's in plot with Cersei. Maybe they're not against each other. That's kind of I took it. And then all of a sudden, when I see the Faith Militant not letting Marjorie go, and then when we're discovering that, Lancel goes down and sees the wildfire, like, oh my gosh, everybody's going to get killed in the Sept of Baelor. There's going to be nobody that survives there. And that was kind of a little bit convoluted to me, because I thought that in the end, I thought the Tyrells would survive this, but in the end, Cersei does prevail victorious and beats everybody once again. The Faith Militant story, just to put an end to that, I thought the guy again who played the High Sparrow, I forget the actor's name. It was
Jonathan Pryce.
I thought he did a great job. I thought his character was meaningful. Do I think it dragged on? Absolutely. But I did like what he posed from where he kind of started. I mean, if you just look at his kind of whole arc from where he started to where he is now, obviously he's dead now, but to how he rose to power, pretty lengthy time for him. In our estimation, it should have been over a lot quicker. But overall, I like what he brought to the show. I like the conflict that he brought to King's Landing, because before that, we haven't seen too much conflict aside from when Tyrion Lannister was there. We can go all the way back to when, in the first season when Ned Stark was there and being held in captivity and getting his head chopped off by the executioner. So and that was in Baelor. That was in 109. So I thought, the showrunners probably, Josh, you needed something going on in King's Landing, and they dragged that along. They brought the Tyrell storyline, and they wanted Cersei to come out on top and kill the Tyrell people, and they do just that. And then for them just bringing this whole connection where Olenna goes to Dorne, and that's how they're going to team up. And that I'm obviously jumping all over the place, but interesting that they went that route to bring back in the Dornish people, which I think you and I are not the only ones on this point, that, the Dorne scenes were scenes that a lot of us wish were thrown in the trash can before they made it to post-production. So when they finally get to Wildfire, the last time that we saw Wildfire obviously was in Blackwater in 209. And then you can go all the way to 210 as well in Valor Morghulis to see Davos climb up into the rocks and wave to the pirates, Salador San, to help him out. I believe that's in 210. And that might be in 301. I don't really recall. That might have been the first episode of the third season when Davos is rescued. Nonetheless, Wildfire returns. And
wait, I want to interrupt you because I want to push back. I don't think you talked about it at all. It's not that I thought the Faith Militant thing was, it was dragged out a little bit. My issue with them wasn't that it was dragged out. My issue with it was that it never made any sense. How is this little group of, like, for instance, the Septa, in this episode, Cersei basically chains the Septa down to the table and tortures her like, oh, like this is some big deal. Like she was some sort of big threat. And yes, to Cersei, she was a big threat. But again, how did this woman, this woman, like, look at her. She's a nobody. Like, Cersei could have had any of her guards, anyone, like the weakest one, cut her down, cut almost half of the Faith Militant down. How did this not happen a season and a half ago? Why is this just happening now? Like, it makes no sense. Why is all this happening right now? Other than it's the finale and the writers need to write it. You know, it's kind of the same thing with Dany, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But again, why is this happening now? Why didn't this happen a season and a half ago? You know, it's not like something changed. It's not like, I mean, you could say like, oh, they took out all the Faith Militant, but were there that many Faith Militant to begin with? Okay. Basically, the show, I think, did a very bad job of portraying the Faith Militant. You know, it wasn't so much to drag that, just that it made no sense. How is this group that's like a little group taking over this massive city with these massive armies?
And everybody's simply afraid of them, right? You see Jaime Lannister and the whole
How are they afraid of them?
Yeah, everybody just was inferior. They could not match what they brought to the table, which, like I said, you know,
you're telling me Bronn couldn't take out the entire Faith? I think Bronn could take out the entire Faith Militant the way they portrayed it.
But why didn't it happen then on the show?
Because the writers needed to delay it so we could get to this point.
Right. That's the whole point.
But I'm saying that is not good. That's my point. I'm saying that is not good. That the only reason that none of this happened was because the writers needed this group to be in power without justifying it. That's what I'm saying.
I'll tell you what. I mean, if this happened 5 episodes ago, I think it would have been great.
No, I disagree, because again, the premise of my argument is the same. It's that the Faith Militant had no power. They should not have been allowed to take over to begin with. And the fact that they've kept control for this long, you're saying, oh, it's being dragged out. I mean, it's not so much being dragged out as nothing makes sense. This group, like, it's not like they had like this army. Again, the strongest person they've shown has been a guy with basically a billy club. That is the strength of the Faith Militant versus the Lannister army, which we've seen, you know, conquer the entire, you know, Westeros basically. So if it happened 5 episodes ago, I would still be saying the exact same thing, that how did they have control for a season and a half? So, I mean, if you disagree, then I guess we'll just have to leave it there. But that's my thoughts on it.
I like that the faith came into play. I like that they kind of, you know, took control of King's Landing, because King's Landing, at one point, Josh, if you recall, if you go back a season or 2, was getting, you know, you go all the way back to Joffrey when he was in power. Then you go to Tommen Rising, and then when Tommen first became king, and Marjorie was the queen, things were going to be all right. And then the conflict started with the Tyrells versus the Lannisters when Cersei got in the way and said to Marjorie, "Hey, I still want to run things, not you." And then you fast forward, they wanted, the showrunners, I believe, just wanted to add another layer, more fuel to the fire.
Okay, David, I'm going to stop you there. Because, again, you're just not getting it. I understand that they added conflict. I understand that. Conflict is always a good thing. I'm saying that the conflict made no sense. It would be like if you know, they were doing an episode of The West Wing, and a group of tourists in the White House with no guns decided to, hey, we're going to take over the White House. And like the Secret Service couldn't stop them, the U.S. military couldn't stop them, no one could stop them. That would be the equivalent. Like, how are the Lannisters, the Tyrells, all their houses that are the Kingsguard, not able to take down the Faith Militant? I think that is the root of the issue. Not that they're an issue, but their power is an issue.
I agree. I see your point, and I think if you just like I said, it's fiction. That could never happen. Of course not.
Right, but fiction still has to. Okay, I understand it's fiction, but you know what? Just because it's fiction doesn't mean it doesn't necessarily have to make sense. Like, in some way, A has to equal, you know, A plus B has to equal C. 1 plus 1 has to equal 2. You know, I understand it's fiction, but if it makes, you know, and that's the thing about Game of Thrones that I think is the big selling point of the show. It's that it is fiction. It's set in this fictional world, but it still is very grounded. And I think that's what a lot of people like about the show, is it is a very grounded show, even though it is fictional, you know. And I think the Faith Militant, the Faith Militant, it's not about the fantasy element of it. It's about the practicality element of it. The whole series has been about how powerful the Lannisters are, how powerful this army. I'm just trying to convince you at this point because I don't know what, like, I feel like I keep repeating myself. But again, if the Lannisters are so powerful, all these people are so powerful, what you're telling me is the Faith Militant could have almost gone after the White Walkers. Like, that's the way the show wanted to make it because basically they took over the city.
Does it come full circle to you that the Lannisters had to resort to wildfire like Tyrion did in season 2 in Blackwater and use wildfire to win? I don't want to call it another war, but win another feud over somebody.
Sure, you could look at it like that. I don't actually bring it back to Tyrion and the Battle of Blackwater. I would bring it back to more so the Mad King and how he wanted to burn the city down. And it's interesting because this whole time we've seen people say that Cersei loves her children. That's her only redeeming quality. And really, when Tommen died, she basically killed Tommen. And when she sees Tommen dead, I don't really think she cares. We don't really see her crying or really any emotion from her. And then the next thing we really see her is her sitting on the Iron Throne later on. So I think this is more of a full circle, not going back to Tyrion, but more to the Mad King, is this is someone who's gone crazy and basically has killed their entire family, a lot of people in the city, a lot of really important people. So I think that's more the relation you should make to the Mad King, that Cersei is almost now the Mad King. I think that's more the appropriate one.
Well, when they introduced Qyburn in this series, one of my bold predictions to you coming into this episode was, and albeit I was half right, not to spoil anybody who hasn't read the books, is that Pycelle does get killed. I thought, albeit it would be by somebody else, that wasn't the case, and we'll leave it at that. But he does get killed. But when they brought in Qyburn, you knew just the makeup of this guy, that maybe he'd have a bigger role in episodes to come. Tonight was no exception, Josh, as he played a role in obviously killing Pycelle. And his little, the children, his spies, if you will, or his little birds that Varys had, came into play. I thought Pycelle, this season, if you just take this season, wasn't a detriment to Cersei as much as he was in seasons past. I thought that they could have killed him off a season or two ago, and maybe it would have made more sense because we didn't see too much conflict. Granted, we saw disagreements when he didn't want Jaime and Cersei at the table. But I thought in seasons past we could see where he disagreed entirely. Of course, in the beginning, he was all Lannister, Lannister, Lannister. And then things obviously started to change a little bit. Now they finally kill him. Qyburn does it. He comes in, obviously posed a threat to him because he's not a true maester, if you will, like Pycelle was. But
I believe he had his chains, from what I understand, his chain link taken away from him.
Right. I think you're right.
It got taken away.
Yes. So the fact that he gets killed going into Qyburn's chambers with the little birds, we'll call them. I thought that was kind of cool, and I thought I really enjoyed the end to him. I thought it was well done. I mean, listen, this guy was a crook from the start. He could walk. He slept with women on the side. He was not a legitimate, authentic character of what he portrayed himself as, this old, worn-down human being. In the end, he was someone that put on a false front, and the end comes for him in season 6. And really a long run, because I want to say, if he wasn't in the first episode, I want to say he was in 101, I guess, maybe 102. I
think he wasn't in the first episode. I think he might have even been like in starting the 3rd episode or the 4th episode. I don't think it was 102 because they were still on the King's Road. I think it was same thing with Varys and same thing with Littlefinger. I think they came into play.
Maybe the fourth or fifth. You might be
Yeah,
right.
I don't think that late, but I think the third or fourth episode is when they started to be in. Third, I'll say.
But the end for him, and the time has come. He's gone. Qyburn takes over, and that's it for Pycelle in the series.
Yeah, I mean, he really hasn't played a big role in the show since like the end of. Honestly, the last thing I really remember him doing was mocking Tyrion after the Battle of Blackwater. That's the last thing I really remember. Last time he was really relevant in the show. But ever since then, he's just kind of been there. You know, he hasn't really done anything. So, you know, when they killed him, I was just like, yeah, you know, it's about time. He's got to go. You know, he's definitely served his usefulness on the show. So,
did you like that the little birds ended him?
Yeah, I thought that was in
somebody else.
I thought it would have been. I'm sorry, say it again.
Did you think it was going to be somebody else like I thought, or did you think? Or I guess, how did you think?
No, I mean, I know who you're talking about from the books. I didn't think it was going to be that person.
Okay.
But I thought, I'm not shocked he died. And yeah, I think it's fitting that the little birds killed him. You know, if I had to make a prediction, I probably would have said the mountain, but little birds make sense, you know. I mean, he's gone. It's not really, I don't think it's a really big deal to me. You know, he's gone. That's it.
Okay, so Lancel Lannister, part of the Faith Militant, is following one of the children carrying the torch, and he's basically going underground. And Lancel on his journey not only gets stabbed, but he sees, as he drags along the ground, this green glowing goo, which is wildfire that we saw in season 2. That whole wildfire scene, and just the fact of Marjorie's looking at the High Sparrow, and the High Sparrow could have said, everybody, let's get out of here. Something bad's going to happen. Cersei is not here. She's not here for a reason. And Marjorie Tyrell is smart enough to point that out. High Sparrow sticks to his guns. He does not care. Tells the Faith Militant to restrain everybody within the Sept of Baelor confines. And, of course, Lancel Lannister sees the end of him, and essentially that whole Sept and all those characters. Now, I guess that's CGI work, and like we saw in Blackwater, and you and I, when we talked about last episode, still rate probably Blackwater as one of our favorite episodes, if not our favorite. I thought when that happened and the Sept of Baelor blows up and everybody's gone, I think they show it through... God, when the wildfire goes into the Sept of Baelor, who's the first one? Is it through the High Sparrow that we see it, like through his eyes? We see it through Lancel.
Wait. Well, can I just say one thing about Lancel? Because this show loves to play fast and loose with how damaged people can get. Because I remember a few episodes ago, Arya Stark was like repeatedly stabbed with a really long-inch blade from an assassin, and she pretty much walked away from it totally fine. Lancel gets stabbed one time from a little tiny like butter knife from a little kid, and he's like practically dead, crawling on the floor, bleeding out. I mean, again, you know, that I'll give a little bit past to, but I just wanted to point that out because I kind of think that's kind of funny that this guy who gets basically stabbed is like just almost dead. But anyway, yeah, I think Lancel's the first person we see his eyes, like we see the wildfire from, and when the explosion happens, it's the kind of like it starts to get under the Sept, so the High Sparrows like blows up, but they pretty much all die. And not only was Marjorie and Mace there, and the High Sparrow, but also Kevin Lannister was there as well.
Yes, he was, and he plays. He played a much larger role in the books, with essentially in the Winds of Winter book that's coming out. I think he's going to play. Obviously, it's not out yet, but I think he's going to play an even more integral role. But in the Dance of Dragons, and you can go all the way back, as Kevin Lannister comes to King's Landing in the books, he's had more of a role. We didn't see that in the show as much. Kind of was in the background a little bit. Had a couple of lines here and there when when Tyrion's father was still alive. So, and Tywin. So, I thought that whole direction, whatever the editing that they did in post with the CGI and the wildfire again, I think that I give them 2 for 2 on the wildfire. I was like, damn, this is really, really good. And what a resounding start to season finales. And I started our Essos2Westeros program tonight listing all the season finales. And I remember bits and pieces of each one. And a lot of them are not memorable. Some have had better endings than others. But for the most part, we've come away a little bit disappointed from each. We'll get to our disappointments in this particular episode later on, but I thought the wildfire CGI effects were simply brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, are you asking me? Yeah, I mean, I really thought the explosion at the Septa Baelor was really cool. From seeing it from far away, it was really cool to see.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think when they panned out from, are you talking like from Cersei's point of view? Like,
yeah, to see that. And then also at the end when Jaime rides it on the horse and you see kind of the fire, I'm assuming I'm assuming Jaime didn't come back that day. So it's really cool to see the fire still burning from, I guess days of being out there. So that was pretty cool. I thought that was probably one of the better effects they've done in a while.
And you touched on Cersei's clothing, and I give you credit because she definitely was dressed in different garb than she's normally in. And she was ready to go to battle in there. Now, when it comes to Tommen, at first we see, I guess, his servant, if you will, whatever it's called, comes in and says, all right, the trial's starting. He says, just a moment. And then we see Sir Gregor, the Mountain, come in and kind of tell him, no, you can't go off. He puts his hand up to his shoulder and kind of tells him, no, you got to stay in here, and obviously doesn't talk. Tommen seeing this from afar, and they wisely cut to a shot of him just staring. I think we see the back of his head just staring at the blaze. And obviously he knows that everybody's there, including his wife and his queen, Marjorie, is now gone. When they show those shots to you, I personally at the time did not think his life was going to come to an end. I thought that, okay, he's going to start over and he's going to get with his mother. And his mother, I thought, was going to come right to him. Interesting that his mother wasn't with him at the time, kept him, in his quarters, and she, I guess, was in hers. I didn't think, and I'm not bashful to say this, I didn't think he was going to die. And very interesting. No dialogue whatsoever, which I think, and we say this on TV a lot, less is more. And sometimes that's why I thought the opening to this episode was brilliant. They didn't need any lines. Sometimes the best acting is done just by the direction of the characters and just facial expressions and just the shots that the crew get. And I thought they really hit it home well with him. And the end, he just jumps off the ledge, and that's it for King Tommen's reign, albeit very short.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes not speaking is the best. This show, I think, did it well. There's a lot of other shows that don't do it as well. This show did it well. I thought Tommen was going to be killed by the Mountain originally when he walked in. So when he didn't die there, I was like, okay.
Now, why would the Mountain kill him, though?
Why?
Yeah, why?
I didn't know. Just because I remember there was a prophecy from Maggie the Frog, which I've been made aware of recently, and basically that Cersei's children were going to die at her own hands, basically. So right. I figured that might have been the reason why. That was my only explanation. But when he's looking out the window, I didn't really know what to happen. As soon as he walked away from the window and they held the shot on the window, I knew he was dead. I knew he was jumping out of it because you don't hold a shot on the window like that for that long. Like, he took off his crown, So immediately when he took off his crown, thinking, okay, something's going to happen right here. He's gone. And then they held on the window and it was over. So Yeah, I mean it's an interesting end for Tommen. He was kind of one of the innocent Lannisters, maybe him and his sister, I forget her name, Marcella, at the moment. They were kind of the innocent.
Children are gone.
I'm sorry?
All the children are gone. Joffrey, Marcella, and now Tommen.
Well, the prophecy is, if we remember from, was it last season, when Cersei heard the prophecy as a young girl, that all her children were going to die, and that she was going to die at the hands of her little brother. Now, Cersei has taken that to mean that Tyrion is going to be her end, that Tyrion is going to kill her, and that is why Cersei has been so anti-Tyrion. But Jaime Lannister is also Cersei's little brother. And when Jaime comes back and kind of has that look at Cersei, I do not think that spells good news for Cersei. And I could definitely see Jaime Xing Cersei next year.
Wow. That would be something.
But it's the prophecy. I mean, that's part of the prophecy. Thus far, it's all come true. So, and all the deaths of Cersei's children have pretty much been at her own hands, except for maybe Joffrey. All the other ones are kind of, although that one kind of is.
Well, I guess Tyrion shipped Marcella off in that deal.
Yeah, but okay, everything. Let me rephrase. Everything Cersei has done has caused a chain reaction that has led to the deaths of her children. Some she's more responsible for than others. I would say this one, the death of Tommen, she's the most directly responsible for. But Joffrey, I mean, she killed her husband. And as a result, Joffrey became king, and it put this kid into a situation where he's making a lot of enemies. Marcella, I mean, you know, bottom line is I think Cersei has been a terrible mother. She's been a terrible character, terrible, like a villain. And I wouldn't be sad to see her go. I mean, I know the show's over, so I'm guessing the next 2 seasons they're going to be killing a lot of people off. But you know, if she goes, I won't be sad.
So that first sequence of this whole show, we see a host of characters that are gone, and that's exactly what you get. And like we mentioned off the top of the program, when you get to basically your last, you know, full season finale, what I mean by that is we're having our last full 10 episode season. At least that's what HBO is telling us as of now, that they got to move the storyline along, because in 2 years the show may be over. Maybe over sooner than that, maybe over later than that. We'll have to see. Be interesting to see when the book is the next book, The Winds of Winter, is coming out. I believe there's no announcement for that as well. So you mentioned, let's continue with Jaime Lannister, because that's a good segue. So the last shot we see of Jaime Lannister in this particular episode, let's start from towards the end, in the throne room when Cersei is being crowned that she is the queen, and Qyburn puts the crown on her, and they say, "Long may she reign." Now let's rewind to him and the Freys. When he's sitting down with Walder Frey, and he's having that disagreement about, you know, and Walter says that we're both Kingslayers and we're both this bad people and everybody hates us, but look where we are now, and look that we took over the Tully's castle that was held for 1,000 years. When they're having that disagreement, a thought popped into my mind that I was like, and I think I even mentioned to you, I thought Frey was dead. And
I thought the same.
I thought that Jaime was going to turn right then and there and just stab him, and that was the end. But he just, you know, he said his piece, and he stormed away. Walder Frey gives a look, and then they cut to something else. The whole Frey stuff, we can tell that the end was coming for them, because obviously, what did they bring? 4 guys, maybe his 2 sons and 2 other garrisons to the Blackfish and the Tully Castle to try to take it. And that siege obviously didn't go through until the Red Army came with the Lannisters. So in the end, they were kind of foreshadowing that, okay, the Freys are nothing. They've always been nothing. They're not true conquerors. And Walder Frey's life ends. How his life ends, we'll get to a little bit later. But I thought that Jaime Lannister at the time, Josh, I'm curious to hear what you thought at that juncture of the show. I thought that he was just going to turn to his left and kind of hit him right in the heart.
Yeah, I mean, Jaime's purpose in this episode was was twofold. Number one, it was to reintroduce the phrase to us,
Right.
to set up Arya later on. That was number one. And the second thing he had to do was basically give the look at the end to Cersei as she's going on the Iron Throne. So Jaime didn't really have a huge role in this episode, but he just had a role to set a lot of things up. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the future, especially if this prophecy is true. I mean, Tyrion is coming back to Westeros now, so Tyrion could still kill Cersei, especially if they are heading for King's Landing. But I think it would be more dramatic if Jaime ended up killing Cersei. Maybe no one will kill Cersei, but I'm just saying what the prophecy is here. So,
well, the Frey house comes to an end on the show, and listen, at this point they got to start.
A lot of houses came to an end on this show.
Yeah, you're right, and but the Frey, one of them, they didn't really get big until 309. Obviously, the Reigns of Castamere and the Red Wedding. It wasn't a house that played an integral role from the beginning up until that episode. And after that episode, even, they kind of went away. So now that I agree, I think Jaime was that sort of that connector that does bring them back, and a good way for the show to have that theme linger that, hey, the Freys are still very bad people, and that, yes, in the end, they would get, their due. And Walder Frey, a bad guy as he is, certainly did. It comes at the hands of a different character, but I'm okay. What I'm getting at is I'm okay putting that scene there with Jaime, because I think it sets it up for what's to come later on. Because if they just have Arya there, as a faceless woman or a faceless man, however you want to put it, as somebody else turns, it wouldn't have made sense. I'm glad that they had Jaime there first, and then have Arya a little bit later on.
Well, can I just say something? We don't necessarily know the timeline of this show. That's one thing I think the show hasn't really done a good job of, is setting up, like, are all these events happening simultaneously? Are they happening like what's the timeline of the show? And on two occasions, just in one episode, like, there's some teleporting going on there, because Arya was across the Narrow Sea. How is she already at the Twins going at Walder Frey? Like, something's going on there. And then same thing with Varys. Like,
that was the best.
Left last episode to go back, not just to Westeros, but to Dorne, which is all the way south of Westeros, to the most southern point of Westeros. So not only did he leave last episode, go to Dorne, but make a deal and come back
in this episode.
And not only come back, but come back just to go back. So, like, I don't know. I mean, okay, that's a fiction part I think we can just overlook there, but I just want to put it out there that, like, someone's flying,
At least they didn't show Arya on another ship to close out the season.
There's something going on there. There's definitely a fast pass.
And as you know, listen, they got to use the easy pass.
Of course.
And I think that at this point, it's something that's necessary. And I know you and I are both in favor that they should have used the easy pass, sun pass, whatever you want to call it, with some other characters as well. Now, let's flash back all the way across the Narrow Sea and go to Winterfell. As you rightfully predicted, and many could see this coming based on last episode, was that Davos took issue to finding some stuff about Shireen, whether I think it was, what was it, a toy or something like that, from Stannis, maybe given to her. And he obviously knows that Melisandre had something to do with it. And we finally see Davos go toe-to-toe with Melisandre, albeit the decision maker of this sequence is Jon Snow.
You want me to comment on that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so this season started off. Oh my god, back. David, hold on. You take it for a second. I'm gonna go grab my headphones.
Okay. So the scene starts with Melisandre and John at first going toe-to-toe with one another and just talking. And then Davos comes storming in. And I thought it was great because it saved a lot of, just basically dialogue between Jon Snow and Melisandre. It got to the point. The point of that whole scene was that Davos was going to come in and take umbrage with what Melisandre has done in the past and all her wrongdoing, and that she really is this bad person. And Jon Snow sides with Davos in the end and elects not to kill her at Winterfell, which, to me, Josh, obviously the way it ends, her character, in my estimation, is not over. Obviously, if you're not killed on screen, we're left to believe that she lives to see another day.
She's definitely not over. She lived to fight another day. I mean, the season started off with the big ending of the first episode of the season was her taking her necklace off and revealing that she's obviously much, much, much older. So I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought she might be killed. I didn't really know, but something needed to happen with her. Something still needs to happen with her because there's a lot going on there.
Well, let me ask you, but we never find out anything else about that.
That's my point.
Go ahead.
No, that's my point. Is that they kind of open this door that they take off her necklace and she's very old. So something there is going on. She's going to have a big role to play. My thought was either something's going to happen this episode with her and she's dead, or they're going to keep her on because she has a bigger role to play. And obviously she's going to have a bigger role to play in the war to come because she's still alive. And there's just no way they're just going to let her go because there's just so much juice there that they need to squeeze that we have to see her again. I mean, she's one of my favorite parts of the show. So
you're happy that Jon Snow doesn't say, all right, let's execute her right here, Winterfell.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she needed to survive. I mean, even I remember there's a scene, I think back in season 3, or maybe I think it's season 3, when Arya is with the Brotherhood Without Banners, and maybe it's in season 2, I don't remember, but she's with the Brotherhood Without Banners, and Melisandre comes up to her, and there's this interaction between them, and it's just so weird, but it's setting up this thing with Melisandre that there's something big with her. She's going to play a big role in this end game. And to kill her off right there, I think, would have been a real shame. So I'm glad we're going to get to see more of her. And, yeah, there's just no way they could kill her. Because she has real magic. I mean, she did bring Jon Snow back to life. I mean, is Jon Snow really going to execute her for killing some girl who he's never met before? I mean, half of the people at the Wall have had to do probably murdered little children.
But were you shocked that Jon Snow was quick to side with Davos?
No, I'm not really. No, not really. Not really. I mean, they just need to get her out of there. They just need to set her up that, hey, Melisandre, you're going away for a little bit, and then we'll bring you back next season or in 2 seasons to, you can finish off the story or something.
I'm just so happy that Davos has survived after everything with Stannis and Stannis putting him into a cell back at Dragonstone, and him surviving even before that, surviving Blackwater. I mean, you can go on and on and on what Davos has been there. Now to see him, flourish now at Winterfell under Jon Snow, whatever he's going to be, maybe he'll be the Hand, maybe he'll be just an advisor, maybe he'll be nothing. But I am so happy that he is left on the show because out of all the secondary characters, he's one of my favorites, and I think the actor is tremendous, number one, and I think he brings something that a lot of other characters to Jon Snow didn't. For example, at the Wall, you can talk about Pip, you can talk about the other guys, and we weren't as emotionally invested in them as kind of comrades to Jon Snow. Now we see this this now friendship between Davos and Snow, and I think that's something that I hope they go to battle with each other when it comes, and if it's against the White Walkers, it's against the White Walkers.
Yeah, at this point, that's all that's going to happen.
A little bit later on, because we'll touch on them. But that particular scene, I really did like, and again, how I started when you were getting your headphones. I like the fact that Davos came storming in. Basically, there was just a short dialogue between Melisandre and Jon Snow, and then Davos comes storming in, and we just get to the chase. And it's about time. And yes, maybe if they do try to, if they hang Melisandre, or we learn something about her being older, if she was like, if she went to the stake herself or took her necklace off, I guess that would have been a wow factor for the show, because that would have brought it full circle from when we see her as an older woman. But that still, as you said, that door is left wide open. So for that portion, Davos kind of getting his last word in about Shireen and how he loved her, like as if, I think he says in the show, as if she was one of his. I thought was great, and I'm happy that Davos finally, after Melisandre kind of has, if you remember, in seasons past, has kind of told Stannis, "Hey, this guy's a threat to you," and Stannis, by a small thread, has kept him alive. I think even Stannis's wife couldn't stand Davos and never wanted Davos to see the daughter and all that stuff. So I'm happy that in the end, Davos survives Stannis and everybody who was against him. He's a great character.
I love Davos. Nothing else to say there. Davos and Melisandre, the Stannis Davos Melisandre thing has always been one of my favorites. So I'm glad we get to see them into at least in season 7. So yeah, I'm excited. That's all I have to say there. They're great.
I guess since we're on that part, let's take it a little bit out of order here, but let's continue with the Jon Snow theme, and that is that we finally see them in, I believe it's the Great Hall of Winterfell, and we see all the houses in the north, and they're talking about who they want to plead allegiance to, and of course, getting a couple great lines is the one and only now Lady Mormont. She steps up and sets basically the tone for that whole meeting. Kind of a really cool scene that we find out who the real King of the North is. Before that, not to bounce around, but Littlefinger, did he say that he wanted to side with Sansa? Is everybody going with Sansa as the one true, obviously she's the true star, but everybody basically siding with her versus Jon Snow?
Yeah, okay, so this episode, from what it seems, is like we finally get, I don't want to call it a big reveal because it's kind of been obvious this whole time, but it's kind of the first time Littlefinger's actually straight out come and said it. He wants the Iron Throne. Littlefinger says, he imagines himself on the Iron Throne, and in his mind, he's siding with Sansa to get it. And the only way that the Starks are really going to be able to control the North, and he knows how important the North is with Sansa Stark at the head, because her name is Stark. And now with this army that he has with House Aaron and the Wildlings, he wants to take the Iron Throne. That's pretty much what he said. So yeah, so Littlefinger has basically come out and said he's siding with Sansa Stark. Now Sansa, we don't know if that's true, that he really wants to side with Sansa Stark, although he does kind of love her mother. But Sansa calls him out right away and basically says, "You've changed sides before. This isn't the first time. You're not going to change again." And then even at the very end, when everyone's cheering for,
they cut to him, right? And he's not saying anything.
He's not saying anything. The look on his face is just, his wheels are turning. Something's going on. Now, if I'm Sansa in that situation, I'm thinking to myself, I have to get rid of Littlefinger, because Littlefinger is plotting a coup to kill Jon, to do something, because Littlefinger is not – we know Littlefinger. He's not going to take this lying down. He wants the Iron Throne, and he's not just going to stop there because Sansa rejected him. He might try to kill Jon. He might try to do something, but he's going to push forward with his agenda. And right now at the moment, Jon Snow is in the way. If his agenda is truly to marry Sansa, which it does seem like that could be it. You know, he obviously had love for Catelyn. This is the first time he's, you know, kissed Sansa Stark like he did at oh my God, what's the where's House Aaron? Where's the seat of House Aaron? With the moon door?
And the Vale.
The Vale. But what's this place called? Look it up. Look it up. I'll keep talking, but please look it up. So,
right.
I mean, Littlefinger is going to obviously continue his agenda, and Jon Snow's in the way now. Maybe Sansa's in the way. We don't know. But he laid out his agenda that he wants the Iron Throne. I feel like we can lock that in. We've always known it because even in season 1, there was an interaction between Varys and Littlefinger where Littlefinger's looking at the Iron Throne and Varys comes in and says, do you imagine yourself sitting up there? So it's always been something that we've known he's wanted, but I think he just finally came out and confirmed this is what he wants. This is his agenda.
You're talking about the Eyrie.
Yeah, the
Eyrie it's called. Eyrie is how you say
it. Just called the Eyrie?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Eyrie. Eyrie, which
right.
With the moon door. Yeah.
Right, okay. It's called the Eyrie?
Yes.
Okay.
And then they have the Bloody Gate. Yeah, so we've heard of all these things before. And then we have, you know, the Mountains of the Moon. We've seen.
Right. Okay. We don't need to talk about the Eyrie. I was just saying that's where he first, you know, he kissed Sansa at. So this isn't the first. He obviously has some sort of lust toward the Stark women or the Tully women, and he obviously sees Sansa as that. So let's just play along that he wants Sansa by his side. I'm assuming he sees Jon Snow as the threat. So he's going to want to take him out next season.
Right.
Not just a guess, but from all the signals they were sending, that seems to be what's going down.
Hey, I love that Lady Mormont gets another great couple of lines because I think she's slowly turning into a fan favorite. And amidst all these men that are, probably, maybe 40 years older than her, 50, 60, you can go on and on and on. She comes in with the line that says, hey, she's going with Jon Snow. They don't care that he's a bastard. He has Ned Stark's blood, so we're all siding with him. We've seen a couple scenes like that with the swords and guys going with somebody. I just love that part. And good for Snow to get back into the driver's seat, if you will. We see it, you know, as he becomes Lord Commander before he gets killed for the first time, I guess, at the Wall. And now Sansa is side as he is the leader as of now.
Oh, shit. David, did we lose you? Did we lose you, David?
Talking about the scene and how I love
what scene you cut out.
I like the fact that when Lady Mormont utters those lines and everybody follows him, I'm saying that we've seen scenes like that in seasons past. You can go back to The Wall where everybody's going with Jon Snow, with the exception of, I guess, Alistair Thorne. And who was the other guy who came from the really funny guy who came from King's Landing?
Yoren?
Not Yoren.
Wait. Go back. What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about.
I liked the scene that we saw Jon Snow tonight where you see all the houses in the north rallying around Snow.
Glover, Manderley.
Correct. And we saw a similar scene a few seasons ago at the Wall where everybody rallies around Jon Snow. He wins the election. Everybody with the exception of Alistair Thorne and the other guy who used to be the head of the City Watch in King's Landing.
Oh, Janis Slint.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So in this case, though, everybody sides with Lady Mormont, and once again, she has some great lines, and everybody follows her, and I love it. I thought it was great, and a good end in this sixth season for Winterfell with Snow, Sansa, Davos, all the houses in the north, and they say it. Winter is here. Not winter is coming. Winter is here. And those three words are very telling, because throughout this whole series, all we hear from up north with Ned Stark and then Catelyn, and the list goes on, that winter is coming. And now the tenor has changed, Josh. Winter is here. And they know, yeah, Cersei's doing some stuff that is terrifying, a little bit south, obviously, in King's Landing, but there is another war, a much bigger war to be had, and that's coming when the Night King comes with the White Walkers. And all the houses in the north obviously haven't seen the White Walkers and are hearing it from Tormund and Jon and others. We're eventually going to see those houses in the north have to defend that part of this whole kingdom. So I thought that was a nice end for right now in season 6 up there.
Maybe. Or
Jon goes out on a high. I mean, my one issue that I have in this episode, and I said it to you before, I wanted to see the White Walkers in this episode. Okay, the whole series starts with the White Walkers.
But okay, that's exactly why you weren't going to see them in this episode, David, because the whole the whole series is building up to the one moment we all know is coming, and that is the showdown between the White Walkers and most likely Daenerys and the dragons. That's the most likely thing that's going to happen. So that's going to be the end game. That's going to be the next 2 seasons or whatever. So we're not going to see that. And to be honest, I was a little bit disappointed because not because we didn't see the White Walkers, but because the one thing I wanted to see more of, the one thing I've actually been the most interested part of this season has been Bran. And the only thing we got there was really just, we got this big revelation with Jon Snow. And I think we do a disservice to Jon Snow if we don't talk about that revelation, is that
Go ahead.
The theory now that pretty much everyone has heard of, R plus L equals J, which is Rhaegar plus Lyanna equals Jon. So Lyanna Stark.
Who's Rhaegar Targaryen, for those that don't know?
If you don't know who Rhaegar Targaryen is, why are you watching the show? That's my question. So I'm not even going to go any further with that.
Okay.
Sorry, but that's the reality. But it's been confirmed. Well, at least we think it's been confirmed. I don't think she said, maybe they can turn up the audio in the thing, but I didn't hear Rhaegar Targaryen. But we do know Jon Snow is Lyanna Stark's child and not some whore named Wyla or whatever. So that's been confirmed. But this is the question I have, and I just wrote this down beforehand. So we're led to believe that the only people who know about this are Ned Stark and Howland Reed, who was the guy who saved Ned Stark. But there's a woman who's at the Tower of Joy who's basically Lyanna Stark's handmaid. I mean, what happened to her? Who is this extra woman? I mean, I feel like no one's talking about that. Like, it's not like Ned's just going to execute this other random woman there. So supposedly there's another woman, and she's a young woman. So let's just assume this woman is still alive, or they brought her back to Winterfell. Like, what happened to this woman? Because there's this other woman out there who knows that Lyanna Stark, that Jon Snow is clearly the child of Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen. So there's another, I guess, some sort of true-born Targaryen out there. Right. And this woman knows about it. And this woman isn't like some high-born person. She's not some big deal. She's just a random handmaiden. If the show doesn't answer that, I'm going to be very upset, because that is something that they need to talk about, that there is a totally random stranger there that happens to see one of the biggest secrets of the series. And she's just there.
Yeah, they show her in this scene. I absolutely agree, because
that's what I'm saying, and no one's bringing it up.
Like, have an analytical mind, and there's a reason why they include, other than just simply because there would be a handmaid in there or a scepter, whatever you want to have it. you would think she's in the scene. She would know everything there is. And the one thing you mentioned though is she whispered. Do they really need to whisper it there and bleep out not bleep out the words, but we can't hear them on the show? Was that necessary?
It was, because the writers needed to delay more because they needed to keep people interested.
Until they go from the baby to Jon Snow's face? Is that what you're saying?
I was being sarcastic because I agree with you. It's ridiculous. It's like you're on your deathbed. Who are you afraid is going to be listening to you? There's nobody here.
Right.
Why are you leaning in to whisper something to Ned Stark? Like, there's that woman there, but she should know at this point whose child that is. She has to know. She's right there. Like, how does she not know? Who are you whispering to? Other than to keep the audience. And that's one thing I hate, is when people do things in the show that make no sense, but they're done to keep the audience at arm's distance. I really don't like that. I just think it's such a cheap tool. Like, why are you doing that? Why are you keeping me at arm's distance? I mean, just say it. We all know it. Just say it. It's, I mean, it's cool that we finally, the theory has been proven, but at the same time, it's just like, why?
Is that one of the biggest reveals of this whole series, in your opinion?
Yeah, yes and no. I think, okay, I'll say this. It is, because Jon Snow's true parentage has been such a big deal, but at the same time, we've all known it to be true. Like we all pretty much, if you're a fan of the show, you've heard that theory before, especially if you've read the books, you've heard that theory before. So it's not like this is a big surprise. Like the hold the door thing, and that's how Hodor got his name. That was, I think, I think the biggest surprise thus far of this season. I think, though, that Jon Snow's true parentage is not a surprise, but it's like just a confirmation, which is important. It's very important that there's another true-born Targaryen out there other than Dany, because now he can lay claim to the throne and say, hey, I'm a Targaryen and a Stark, so I can do both.
And we see it in season 1 when Ned is, riding with Jon, and then Jon's going to the wall, I believe with Benjen, and says, hey, one day I will tell you about who your mother is when I see you next. And obviously he doesn't see him ever again. So that kind of whole storyline comes full circle all the way back to the show, which I like. And, obviously it's been 5 seasons from then. So I'm glad that we got the reveal. And now that there is a half Targaryen on this side of the Narrow Sea.
Well, he's as much as a Targaryen as Dany is, I believe. No? Because, he's Targaryen Stark, but Dany, we'll have to look this up, but who was the Mad King married to?
I think she was married. I don't know.
Married to his sister? In other words, when you say true, they're all true Targaryens, unless you mean by it like Targaryen blood.
Right. No, I understand.
But, it's just semantics at this point. But basically, Jon Snow he has a claim to the Targaryen name. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, and then we go all the way to the opposite point of Westeros, and we finally get the Sand Snakes back into the fray. Do you want to just end there about who he was married to?
Yeah, he was. So the Mad King, I guess, was married to like some other Targaryen. So there was incest going on there.
Yes, that's what I thought.
Go ahead with the Sand Snakes. But yeah, there was incest there with the Mad King.
Right. So we go to Dorne, and when I see it in the opening, I'm like, oh, we have to see the Sand Snakes all over again. Who are they going to kill this time? And we're going to see the 3 sisters, and we're going to see we're just going to see those awful scenes. And wasn't my favorite, and we see Olenna there. And Olenna's talking with them, and basically they're telling her, Eloria Sand is saying, hey, now we got to come together because, and Olenna, blurts it out. So she knows that, her grandchildren were killed, unfortunately, at the Sept of Baelor because of the wildfire. Now, then we see when Eloria rings the bell Varys comes in. So Varys was plotting with Dorne, which is really an interesting twist because I didn't really see that coming. And if that happened already in the books, then because I haven't read the books in a year plus, I'm just thrown off there. But for him to go right to Dorne,
well, from
I
what
don't know if he was expecting to find Prince Dorne, the Martells, or I don't know. But he has to side with the Sand Snakes here.
Well, from what we know, okay, so if you know Game of Thrones history before the show even started, my understanding is the Tyrells and the Martells were both aligned with the Targaryens against the Starks in the north and the Baratheons and all them in the War of the Usurper or whatever. So when Robert Baratheon took control of the Seven Kingdoms, the Martells and the Tyrells obviously caved in and went along. But we're assuming that the Tyrells and the Martells, for the most part, have held loyalty to the Targaryens. So when Varys says at last episode, and then he teleports over to Westeros, that he's going back to get allies, who's he going to get? He's not going to get the Starks. He's not going to get the Lannisters. He's not going to get the Aarons or all the other families. He's going to the south. He's going to Dorne. He's going to go to the people who were loyal to the Targaryens in the past. So it would make sense that he would go there, because they've been loyal to the Targaryens in the past. So it would make sense that they would lay a claim to the Iron Throne.
But we have to see the Sand Snakes all over again.
Assuming they don't get killed very early on. Because I think they know at this point we ain't no fans of the Sand Snakes. And we don't necessarily have to see them. We just have to see their armies. So we just have to see their banners. That's it.
But Varys somehow magically appeared.
But at the same time, though, if I was Varys, I would think to myself, wow, I want the fake Milton on my side because this is the most powerful army in the world.
Right. So in the end, we get to the point where, okay, Varys now has the South with Dany. Once again, as you mentioned, the Targaryens apparently were side by side with them. I just hope, like you mentioned, that they're kind of done away with in the first part of if you want to call it 7A or however they're going to word the next season, because there's nothing going on there. That's not where the focus should be. The focus should be either in King's Landing, at the Wall, or north of the Wall with the White Walkers.
And I think that's all that's going to happen because Dany's coming over.
Right.
So we don't know where she's going. I mean, we know she's going to Westeros. We're assuming, I think you have to assume she's sailing for King's Landing. Would that be a safe assumption to make? I mean, where else would she sail?
I mean, I think that's the goal right now.
Unless the only other thing on my mind would be, I guess she could sail for like Dorne, meet up with them on land, and then go north. But like from a military strategy, wouldn't it make more sense if the Dornish came from the south and then her ships came from the east? But at the same time, I don't really know how it works because, it's interesting. I guess we're going to talk about Dany here for a little bit, but they say like when it's Dany's scene and she's talking to Tyrion about how it's the right thing to do to leave Daario Naharis behind because he was not right for Westeros. Like he wouldn't be good. You're bringing a Dothraki horde
who's never traveled on ships before.
Who are people who literally pillage and rape and murder as many people as they want into Westeros. You're bringing in a bunch of basically psychopathic murderers in the not just the Dothraki, but in the Greyjoys, who they've said that their life is pillaging and raping and plunging. And Dany says last week, "Oh, well, you're not going to do that." And Yara goes, "Oh, okay." So because Yara said that, all of a sudden everyone's going to obey her. Like that's just not how life works. That's like Obama saying something, and everyone just in America goes, "Oh, okay." That's what's going to happen. Like that's not the way life works. So you're bringing in a lot of people to conquer Westeros who are really bad people. Like you're not going to be welcomed as a good leader. I've never felt Dany has been a good leader. I really hate that the show only shows things from her perspective. I would like them to show a little bit more that what she's doing is wrong. Like I almost want her to take over King's Landing and then have the Dothraki just destroying the city. and how bad of a queen she is, because she's not going to be a good queen.
But she has Tyrion by her side, and I think that's advantageous for her moving forward. And she's obviously listening to him. And I think if you're talking about point of view, I think from the start of this whole series till now, Tyrion has been on the good side of probably all the fans out there.
Yeah, I'm not. No. I'm not saying that. Listen, Tyrion's obviously a good guy, but that doesn't mean that Daenerys isn't doing stupid things. Like, why isn't Tyrion saying to her, like, yeah, obviously we need you to win the Iron Throne, but at the same time, do you realize who's backing you? Do you realize who the Dothraki are? Do you realize who the Greyjoys are? Do you realize who the Second Sons and all your Unsullied are? Like, these are not people who you want ruling over you. Now, I'm not saying the current status quo in Westeros is better. I'm just saying from Dany's point of view, like, the people who she surrounded herself with, they're not the good guys by any standard.
All right, then for all we know, they may all be gone, Josh, when she comes over to Westeros.
When we see the pan out of all the ships, the Dothraki are like, they're mopping the floors. They're like, pirates. They're about to sing a sea shanty. I mean, like you said before, why aren't they throwing up? Why aren't they like they made this big deal. They made this massive deal in season 1, and even in season 2, if you remember, or no, maybe in season 3, when she's sailing, the Dothraki are throwing up with her remaining like, they're throwing up.
Right.
I mean, how all of a sudden the Dothraki are like, they're basically pirates. They're ready to go overseas. Like, again, it's just part of the show, which, like, they never really, like, I'm willing to suspend disbelief, but it's just funny to point it out how, again, in season 1 of the show, it was this major deal, and now it's like, yeah, no big deal. We'll sail over for you. No problem.
Are you okay with the end of Daario Naharis, though, and that Dany's...
It's not the end. It's not the. Let's be clear. It's no end of Daario Naharis. Just because he's over there, we're gonna see him again. Okay.
Why?
Why? Because that's how these shows work. Like, of course we're gonna see him again. Why wouldn't we see him again? Now it's just a way to go back overseas. Or maybe I could see what'll happen. This is what'll happen. Dany will, her dragons will be dead. She's lying on the floor. A White Walker is about to kill Dany, and all of a sudden, a dagger goes to the White Walker's head. It's Daario Naharis. He's been following her this whole time, and he's come over to save the day. That is not the end of Daario Naharis. Okay, if you want to talk, we can talk about that in a second, because I wrote down a list of characters who we did not see this episode, who I'm kind of surprised we didn't see them. So do you want to talk about that? Because we didn't see Jorah, which I kind of expected we didn't see him. We didn't see Brienne or Podrick. We didn't see the Hound. We didn't see the Brotherhood Without Banners. Not that we needed to see them. It's not like they had stories that needed to be addressed in this episode. So I'm not saying we need to see them, because they could easily push it off to next season. I'm just surprised that they didn't throw them in there. I mean, again, this episode didn't need them. In fact, if this episode brought them in, I would think it would be overloaded.
Say your list again from the top.
Okay, so some of the people we didn't see, and this isn't even all of them, because there's a lot of characters that are still out in the ether. But the characters who have been in the season, who have played a big role, and then we just didn't see them at the end. That's my list. Is Bran and Podrick, Jorah, the Hound, and the Brotherhood Without Banners. I guess they're together now. So those are the people who they've played a big role in this season, and then we have not seen them.
So from that list, who were you the most surprised that you didn't see in this episode? If you had pinpoint one.
Well, okay, I'm not surprised we didn't see Jorah. I said to you earlier we weren't going to see him. Bran and Pod, I'm not overly surprised we didn't see them. They were, the last we saw them was rowing away. But at the same time, Varys has been able to literally go from continent to continent, back and forth. Same thing with Arya in the span of half of an episode. Brienne can't go from the Erie River Run to Winterfell in the span of 2-3 episodes. So I'm a little surprised we didn't see Brienne and Pod. It's just ridiculous. I don't want to talk about it. It's just fiction, so I'm willing to spend belief. But I'm kind of surprised we didn't see the Hound, because they made a decent sized deal of bringing him back.
I would say it's a big deal what they made of coming back.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't have
mystery, and that was one of the cold opens.
Absolutely. Now, again, like I said before, I'm just qualifying it that if they put the Hound in, I might have been saying, okay, the episode's a little overstuffed, so they didn't need to put him in. I'm just bringing up the fact that they brought him back, they paired him up with the Brotherhood Without Banners, and it's kind of left a little on a cliffhanger, and I'm fine with them addressing that next season. Again, I'm just a little surprised they didn't bring him back, but I'm not upset. I'm glad we're going to see more. I'm sure we'll see more of him in the future. I'm just, of those people, he's the most surprising I would have predicted we would have seen, and we didn't see. That's all I'm saying.
We'll get to the Brotherhood Without Banners when we talk about our parting shots of the of the episode.
Okay.
But we do see Arya get back in this episode. In the end, she's a faceless woman, faceless man, however you want to put it. And she is the one that, in the end, whacks Walder Frey, who was part of her list. I thought that was great. I did not think that was her. I thought it was just some servant. But when Walder Frey says to this girl, "Oh, I don't recognize you," I thought Jaime Lannister was going to come in and that was going to be in. I did not think that was going to be Arya. So it goes back to your point about she just we don't even see her on a ship. She's just magically at the Twins, shows up and kills Walder Frey.
Well, wait. I agree with you. I was exactly the same. I did not think. I was surprised that we saw Arya there. It's not that we need to see Arya on a ship. It was just a matter of the time frame. Like, Arya just left Essos. She just left Bravos, and all of a sudden she's here. It's just like in the span of one episode. Whereas for some people to walk like 3 miles or like 10 miles is like, a whole season. Right. So, no, I'm surprised I saw Arya there, and it was a good surprise, and I'm glad it just happened quick. And It was just like, hey, this is what's going on with Arya. He kills Walder Frey, great pay. She kills Walder Frey, great payoff. And that's it. And it seems like that's the end of House Frey as well, because she seemed to kill, or at least a good amount, because she killed Walder, and it seemed like she killed his 2 sons as well. So I'm assuming he had many sons, but at least like the big 2.
But I like the fact that we get another kill towards the end of the episode, and it was someone that I think a lot of people since 309, the Reigns of Castamere, the Red Wedding, wanted to be killed, and we're wondering when that time would eventually come. And now we're seeing essentially the start of the end of the series, and Arya getting vengeance from everybody that wronged the Stark family and the Stark name. So it was great to see her, that she's over in. I guess the question for her next is, who's next on her list? Does she go right to King's Landing and try to go there, because Cersei's on that list still? The Mountain's still on that list.
Yeah, I mean, that would be probably maybe. What I'm thinking is Arya has to hear at this point that the Starks have retaken Winterfell. So. And I'm just thinking about it, like it would be an emotional moment for obviously Arya to rejoin with Jon and Sansa. So Arya could go south, but I'm assuming if she hears that the Starks have retaken Winterfell, and Littlefinger even said, news of this is going to spread fast. So you have to assume, and again, remember, the Twins is not that far relatively from Winterfell. So you almost have to assume if Arya is at the Twins and she hears the Starks have retaken Winterfell, is she going to choose to go to Winterfell and reunite with her family, who she has not seen since the end of season 1, or is she going to choose to go to King's Landing? I'm assuming she's going to go to Winterfell. That just would make the most sense. So my guess is Arya next.
It would be nice to get another family affair, and I would love to see all those characters reunite. I would love to get Jon Snow, Sansa and Arya meeting back on screen. When's the last time those 2 characters were with each other?
Arya and Sansa, probably 108.
Yeah, I mean,
107, 106.
Yeah, I don't think. Well, I think in 109 they're even separated, where Sansa's watching from stage and Arya.
Right. But the last time they're actually together,
probably 108.
Right, maybe 108, 107, maybe something like that. So
right. So I agree. If she goes to, I don't think, just my guess, I don't think that's her first move. I just have a feeling that would just be too easy to get.
You don't think what's her first move?
To go
back to Winterfell?
From the Twins to Winterfell.
So what do you think if you're Arya Stark?
Okay. I think she's going to King's Landing.
Okay, let me ask you this: do you think Arya Stark is going to hear that the Starks have retaken Winterfell?
No, not yet. I think nobody has told her that yet.
Okay, fine.
Because at this point in the show, we're not led to believe that Cersei knows that.
But wait. Okay, yes, you're right there. However, Littlefinger made a statement. Again, I'm going to say this again. At the end of the season, news is going to spread fast that I've sided with the Starks who have just taken Winterfell. So we have to assume that news of this is going to spread. And it's going to spread to the Twins. It's going to spread to King's Landing. It's going to spread to these places. And we don't know. We also don't
Old Town
know.
didn't even know that Jorah Mormont died.
Yes, but that's different. That's different. That was played for Jeor Mormont, you mean?
Yes.
That was played for last, but it was also played, to imply that Maester Aemon was old and weak. And I think it's also played to make it that how dysfunctional the Wall is now. The Wall used to be this, obviously they're corresponding constantly. Now it's they're not even corresponding anymore with anyone. They don't even, nobody knows what's going on with the Wall anymore. So I think that's what it's played for a little bit with the Wall. But no, again, we don't know Cersei doesn't know that Winterfell's been taken over. We don't know that.
Right.
Again, we could do a whole podcast on this, but the timeline of Game of Thrones is very confusing because Orlyanna Tyrell knows her children are killed, and she's wearing all black, but she doesn't know this, and this person doesn't know. It just some of the things. Again, I wish there was a little bit more of a timeline, but because there's a lot of things that I think would make a little bit more sense if they were put together.
And then the end of the whole show, we get that big scene. Cue the music. It was almost like a Misa moment in 310 where they're cueing the music and Dany's on her ships and you see the dragons above going through the water and then sailing, which obviously we don't know where in Westeros, but of course sailing across the narrow sea. At that point, I think I looked at the clock and it was 10:10 Eastern time. And there were still 5 minutes left. I thought we were going to see a little bit more. We obviously didn't. And that's how the show ends, of course, with somebody on a ship yet again. So I was okay with it. I wanted more. Obviously, that. We'll get into the particular in just a minute. But how this episode ended, in your opinion, where would you kind of slate it?
Yeah, not great, Bob. I mean, I didn't like the ending because we knew it was – not only did we knew it was coming, but especially since we've talked about it in this podcast, we wanted this moment for 3 seasons now. I mean, why is she just sailing over now? Why didn't this happen a while ago? It's because when you know something's coming, it just doesn't make it good anymore. For instance, at the end of the first season – and maybe we should talk about – the end of every season and rank them because the end of the first season when Dany steps out of the pyre with her dragons, nobody really knew that was coming. There were no dragons at that point. Nobody really knew anything. So that was a wow moment. At the end of season 2, the season finale was great, and then what happened afterward once we get in season 3, not so good. But the end of season 2 was really great. What you had the wall of White Walkers basically coming at Sam. That was a really oh my God moment because we've seen the White Walkers, but we'd never really seen an army of the White Walkers. We've seen one here, one there, but we never really saw an army. Oh, wait. Okay. I want to go back to one thing with Benjen Stark because I just remembered it, and that we're bringing up the White Walkers. Benjen made a point to say there's magic that none of the dead can cross the wall or whatever. Well, what happened in season 1 where that dead guy rose up and attacked Jon Snow and Jorah Mormont?
That's right.
Can anyone explain that to me? He was, from my understanding, he was on the other side of the wall.
Right.
Did the magic not work there? Did the dead guy do some magic spell to get across? I'm willing to forgive it.
I think maybe he was just referring to that he can't.
Why can he not? They clearly said when they built the wall, they put in spells at the bottom of the wall to make sure none of the dead can cross. And all of a sudden, this guy, so Benjen, the guy who knows everything, can't cross, but some random dead guy can. I'm willing to forgive it, but I'm just saying it needs to be pointed out there. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think it's a solid point.
Okay.
And they leave him at the. But go ahead, continue.
Right. Okay. So I just want to point that out. Okay. So back to the finales because I just brought that up with the White Walkers and stuff. So Misa, I thought was the worst ending because there was nothing she just gets raised up by a bunch of slaves or whatever ending. Right. What was season 4? Arya sailing away on the ship. Not very exciting there. Nothing very exciting there. Last season ended with, Jon Snow being killed. But, I guess people like that. I didn't really like it because I think we all kind of knew Jon Snow was going to come back. So it kind of, again, took it away, like the wow factor. And again, come to the season, Dany sailing away on her ships. We all kind of knew it was coming. So there wasn't like some big deal. I think it would have been much cooler to see, like, I know this wouldn't have happened just because of the relation to it. But if we saw some like other family there, like we saw Dany riding with her ships, and we have Targaryen sails, but then we also see these Martell sails, these Tyrell sails. Like, that would have been a little bit cooler of an ending because, like, all these families are coming at them. Right. It wouldn't have made any sense because, like, how do you get the Tyrell army and the Martell army over there? What would be the point of bringing them over there to come back? So that doesn't make any sense, but I'm just speaking to the wow factor of the end, how I did not think the end was anything, like, impressive. It wasn't, like,
honestly, cliffhanger. That was not a cliffhanger to me. I wanted something. I wanted a mystery to be.
You don't necessarily need a cliffhanger. You need the wow factor because the ending of season one.
Was that a wow factor to you? We knew that this was going to happen.
That's what I've been saying. There is no wow factor. The ending. I'll give you an example. The ending of season one. Dany comes out with her dragon. She's naked, and the dragons have been born. There's no cliffhanger there. She survived. The dragons are alive. So there's no cliffhanger, but there's a wow factor. This episode, there's no cliffhanger, but there's no wow factor either because we know this is coming. I think what was more of a wow factor to me was Cersei sitting on the Iron Throne. I was like, whoa. So.
Now, what I wanted to happen was going back to the Brotherhood, and I think we should just straight up address it on here. I don't think this is.
Wait, hold on. I'm being told by one of our millions of viewers that there was Martell sails in the closing scene. I'm being told that. And if that's true, that's interesting. Sorry to interrupt you, David. That's interesting. But at the same time, first off, I didn't see that, so I need to go back and rewatch. But number two, how does that make any sense? So the Martells have now pulled a Varys and sailed across the Narrow Sea only to come back? How is this happening? Why does that make sense? Now, maybe you could say the only argument I could see was Varys went overseas and said, hey, we need more ships. Martell's going to make a deal with you, and you're going to bring your ships over to sail the Dothraki and all your people back. Maybe that makes sense, but even that's a little convoluted. But I've been told the Martell sails were at the end, so I've been corrected.
Interesting. Well, thank you to our loyal fan for giving you that piece of information. That's good stuff. Now, how I wanted this episode to end. Do I dare address it here? I don't want to spoil it.
Address it. There's no spoiling. If you're watching this show, you should know all this. This is not a beginner's class, David. This is a expert level.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. So I wanted to see the Brotherhood without banners at the end.
Why?
And because I wanted to see Lady Stoneheart come on the show. Who is Lady Stoneheart? Well, for those of you who do not know and have not read the books, it is Catelyn Stark resurrected and coming back to try to kill everything in her way and basically get back at everybody who has done her and her family wrong in the past. There have been a lot of theories from seasons past. Maybe we'll see her. In fact, Lena Headley actually put a tweet out. I think it was right before the Red Wedding episode. Took a picture of rocks and said something Lady Stone. Remember that?
It was in a heart. It wasn't Instagram. It wasn't like she said Lady Stone. It was stones in a heart shape.
Right. So we obviously don't get that. I think that would have been a great way to end this, even if they went to black and then I don't know what that's called, Josh, in the film business. You often see it with not after the credits,
right?
But,
they do it a post-credit scene. They do it in the Avengers, like all the Marvel movies and plenty of other movies. It's just a post-credit scene.
Or they could have just faded to black, and then before they went to the credits, they could have just rolled, right?
They could have.
That could, just for effect, could have went to black and then came back up, which I would have loved to see in The Sopranos, but obviously they went to black and that was it.
They never came back.
For another time.
Wow. Okay, so I'm looking. I just want to say this. I am looking at the picture of a screen cap and the Martell flag. There is a Martell ship there.
So they're part of the army coming over.
Yeah, I don't know how to post the link on here, but yes, proven.
Wow.
So wow, it's big.
So no Lady Stoneheart though, and that was a little disappointing to me. I would have loved the wow factor there. You want to call it a wow factor? You want to call it a tanger? I would have loved to see, because you bring the Brotherhood without banners, so you know they're going to be there. You can tie it into the Hound, get Catelyn Stark back in the game. A lot of people out there thought Stoneheart was going to come in. The showrunners gave us a lot of hints, and they leave her out. Can you see a reason why they left her out, though?
Well, I think they know. I can't answer that because I think they know, obviously, a lot more than we do. I mean, they know what is going to happen in the books. And not only that, but they know what her role in the books is. And, earlier in this season, I was convinced. I was like, okay, she's going to come back now. Like, they've just left so many clues. They brought in this idea of resurrection. Like, she could come back. It's a real possibility. And if there was a moment to do it, if there was a holy shit moment, excuse my language, this would have been the moment to do it, to drop it at the end of this season. And because they didn't do it, and there's only going to be 2 more seasons, and they're not going to be full seasons, I feel like before this episode, I would have been locked into, okay, Lady Stoneheart's coming back. Now that she isn't back, I can't see them bringing her back. I don't know
how. What could she do to affect the storyline?
Yeah, again, we don't know where the story is going, so we can't really – it's tough to answer it. But just from a narrative perspective, there's still so many stories out there, and they need to finish those stories up. So why are they going to bring in this really fantastical element to the show that carries so much weight, that is so juicy, to later on in the show when they have all these other stories to finish off? I just don't see that happening. So why they didn't do it, you and I, we can't answer that. We don't know where the show's going. They do, so they have to steer the ship. But, I think that would have been the wow moment that would have, gotten everyone talking. That would have really been like the biggest deal. We don't know. We'll never know why. I'm sure maybe they'll come out in interviews after the show's over and explain why they did or didn't in the future. We don't know. But, at the moment, our best thing can just be to say, they're splitting up her story over other stories, and they only have so much show left that they have to tackle the stories that they already have and not worry about stories that whatever. Also, I just want to say this. There's been a lot of talk. I don't necessarily buy into this, but there's been a lot of talk that the show and the book at this point are really 2 different things, and that they're not going to match up one for one. And it's very possible that George R. R. Martin had a conversation with them and said, hey, guys, this is my story, and this is the way we want to do it, but you guys are going to be doing a different story. And it's very possible that she might in the books be a bigger picture, be a bigger figure, but in this story of the television show, she's just not. So that's another thing. Again, I don't think we'll know for a while, but just throwing out theories.
Would you have been okay with them having flipping the scene of Cersei being on the throne and Dany coming over on the ships with this episode ending with Cersei?
It's tough to say because, it's a wow scene, but it's not that big of a wow scene, I think the placement of hers was right. What I was hoping for would be there would be one more scene after that, and it just never came. So, if the Cersei thing was the second to last thing we saw, and then we saw the Lady Stoneheart, it'd be the 1-2 punch. But the Cersei and then the Dany was like the 1 punch and then the miss. So, yeah.
But why didn't you want to see the White Walkers in this episode? I mean, this goes back to this being the last, season finale of a 10-episode season. I would think, okay, you don't have to show them going to war, but maybe rallying the troops or something. Give us something.
It's not
that a huge part to this end game.
Yeah, I know. Listen, it's not that I didn't want to see the White Walkers. What I'm saying is that the White Walkers are the end game of the show. And in their minds, especially the way this story is developing, is that they're coming in at the end. So if you show them now, you're not going to be able to use them at the end because you've already shown your cards. So they're showing them at the end because this is what I'm assuming. Like, this is totally, you know, conjecture conspiracy. But I'm assuming Daenerys is coming over. She's going to take over King's Landing with her dragons, whatever. But before she can have any sort of calm in Westeros, word is going to come down that the White Walkers are coming. And Dany, you want to show you're a leader. We need you up there right now protecting us. And then it's going to be ice and fire, dragons versus White Walkers. You know, so if they show the White Walkers now, what is going to be their season 7A and B plot? You know, what's, you know, so they have to, you know, draw it out over time. You can't put your best stuff now. You have to bring it out later on.
And I think, you know, going towards the end game as we're getting to nearly the end of the whole show, Bran, you got to think Bran's going to come over to the what I call the good side of the wall, right? And
well, that's where from what I'm understanding, that's where they're going. I don't know where Bran is going exactly, but we know he's going to the other side of the wall because Benjen left him there, and he said, "I can't cross the wall because of magic that supposedly he can't use, but other people can use." So Bran is going to the other side of the wall. We don't know why, but let me ask you this: is it possible, David, that Arya? I know you don't think Arya is going to come north, but is it possible that because you have Jon Snow and you have Sansa in Winterfell, is it possible Bran goes to the wall? He hears the Starks are in charge now. Is it possible Arya hears the Starks are in charge and that there's a big family reunion of the Starks at Winterfell with Bran, Jon, Sansa, and Arya? Because that makes sense. It's all like the pieces, you know, the whole series, everyone's been scattered throughout the world. This is the first time at the end of the season that all the pieces are in place for a massive Stark reunion. That would just make total sense that Bran would hear about this, that Arya would hear about this, that there would be a big reunion. Because again, like I said, this is the first time that all the, you know, the stars have aligned and they're all in the right place and time to meet up. And, you know, it's coming to the end of the show, and we all know there's going to be a big Stark reunion. So this seems like this is the time to do it at. So Bran is coming south. We don't know why. We don't know what his role is to be, but that's just, you know, I'm assuming what's going to happen.
I would love to see that if that's the case. I love reunions, and I love the reunion that we got this season between Jon Snow and Sansa Stark. And for Arya to see another Stark person, I think that would be very emotional to a lot of the Game of Thrones zealots out there. So I don't think that's going to happen so fast. However, I don't, like I mentioned minutes ago, I think our next move is towards King's Landing. I do not think it is.
So what is Bran's next move in your opinion?
Well, that's what I was going to say to you, because I thought he was going to have a much larger piece to this episode. Really didn't.
I agree. I thought the same thing. In fact, like I said, I think I told you beforehand, I wanted a lot of Bran in this episode because I think Bran is so important to the end game, the way they're setting him up. And we did, maybe they're delaying it for future seasons, but I really wanted more Bran. We didn't see it. And I'm surprised. Let me ask you this. Are you surprised? You can talk about Bran. Are you surprised Benjen, they basically brought him in and they already sent him away? I mean, he's already gone. We haven't even gotten
he's
2 whole minutes with him.
I thought that was a little abrupt.
Very abrupt. Because think about it, the last time we saw Benjen was when Bran was first meeting Benjen. And the second time we see Benjen is leaving Bran.
Yeah, it's a shame that Jon Snow can't reunite with Benjen. Maybe he will.
Maybe. If you think about it, if the White Walkers... No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I said maybe the fight will be taken up north.
Of course it's going to be taken up north because the White Walkers are up north. So, you know, and Benjen did say that he's staying up north. So I don't think this is the last we've seen of Benjen. And maybe there will be a reunion with Jon Snow, maybe not. I don't think that matters so much. But I don't think this is the last we've seen of Benjen.
How does this rank amongst the other episodes? I know you and I have touched on it. You went into some detail about, you know, the previous. I think we can cross out, you know, Misa. This was a lot better. Fire and Blood was obviously one of the better ones. Valar Morghulis, is that the one you said where the White Walkers are coming to with Sam?
Yes.
Mother's Mercy was Jon Snow. That's a big one. So, and then the one I left out, the children. What's that one? Is that Arya on the ship?
Yeah.
So obviously that's a bad one. So cross out seasons 3 and 4. So when you boil it down, you got your pick of Fire and Blood, it's 110, Valor Morghulis 210, Mother's Mercy with Snow 510, Winds of Winter 610. Who's your winner for top season finale?
Right. I don't know if this is the winner episode. I like this episode. What'd you say?
The start of the episode was better than the other ones, from what I can remember.
Yeah, I think this episode, just in terms of, okay, before we do comparing this episode to the other season finales, I think this episode stands out. You have to say it stands out.
It's one of the best episodes of the whole show, hands down.
It's it's in the top.
One of the best, yeah.
Top 20, let's say. It's in the top
Really?
20, yes. I don't know. I have to think about it a little more, but there's a lot of other episodes I really like, but a lot of stuff happened this episode. I mean, just the stuff at King's Landing was really good. I really like that.
But doesn't that make you upset? Because don't you feel like they always have to cram stuff in 9 and 10, and they don't get a lot of this stuff done in episodes 1 through 8?
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, look, the show loves to, in a way you could say just skip the first 8 episodes or 7 episodes and just watch 8, 9, 10, and you'll understand everything. Because that's when all the big and good things happen, for the most part.
Right.
But yeah, look, you need to have a payoff at the end. And to be honest, here's the thing. A lot of other season finales of Game of Thrones don't have the massive, explosive endings, no pun intended, that this episode had. They don't have the Sept of Baelor exploding. They have Tywin Lannister riding in on a horse and the horse pooping on the floor. That's the biggest thing that happened in some other season finales. Whereas this season finale, a lot of stuff happened that sets up the ending. So I like the season finale, not just in the season, in the series, I like it. Especially the stuff at King's Landing. Of course, I wish this stuff happened earlier, but again, not to go back to the Faith Militant, but you can't have all this stuff happen in the middle of a season. This explosion at Baelor couldn't happen in the middle of a season. Tommen jumps out the window, because then what? Do you go back to King's Landing? How do you top that? You can't go back to King's Landing. That's the end of that story. So it made sense. The story was completed. It's just right. There should have been. The problem is, I feel like the writers say, okay, this is our A point, and our B point is, the Faith Militant dying, and they just can't fill in the middle, and they have to fill it in with a million scenes of the High Sparrow talking with Marjorie or talking with Cersei, or just these other little scenes that just end up getting lost in the shuffle because they're not really as important. And again, we could talk about this. This is kind of going down a different road, so I don't know if you want to talk about this or move on to other stuff. But this is a show that lives for the moments like the Sept of Baelor exploding, because that's a moment we talked about last episode. We talked about last episode how I don't know if I'm going to remember a lot of things that happened. This episode, I'm definitely going to remember the Sept of Baelor exploding. That was really cool. I'm going to remember some things in this episode. That's what Game of Thrones goes for. They go for those big moments.
Was this episode better, dare I say, was the 10th episode better than the 9th episode, Battle of the Bastards?
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
Is that something we have not mentioned in previous seasons, where we've always said the 9th episode is much better than the 10th? I agree with you. I think you could say it's backwards here.
Yeah, I think this episode was much bigger. And maybe I'm focusing.
We faulted, and rightfully so, a lot of problems with Battle of the Bastards, but continue.
I just want to say, maybe in my mind right now, the only thing I'm focusing on is the King's Landing stuff, just because the explosion was so cool. This episode has a lot, again, we just went through them through however long we've been talking, but there have been a lot of problems with this episode. The King's Landing stuff was great. But Game of Thrones goes for those big moments, and the problem is, the smaller moments, the moments where something like the Sparrows talking with Marjorie, I never remember those, what happens in those scenes. I never remember the talking. Whereas there's a lot of other shows, not to compare this to other shows, but The Sopranos, The Leftovers, Lost, Breaking Bad, where it's those little moments of just two people talking where it's wow, this is something I'm going to remember because how awesome this is. And Game of Thrones goes for the opposite. I'm not knocking on the show. I'm just saying that Game of Thrones is a show that lives for the big moments, the battles, the explosions, the big death scenes versus the little moments. And that's the problem with the show is you have 10 episodes to fill, and maybe this will be resolved next season because there aren't as many episodes, but you have 10 episodes to fill. You can't fill every episode with a $10 million battle. You know, you have to fill it with people talking, and Game of Thrones would rather focus on the battles versus the talking. So, you know, maybe that's why everything happens in episode 9 and 10 or 8, but you know, that's just my analysis. I don't know. That's what I think of it.
We can't end this without ranking now that season 6 is over. Where does this fall now? All the seasons of Game of Thrones. You know, you and I both love season 1 and everything that took place, and obviously that kind of brought us into the show. Season 2 was okay. Season 3, Reigns of Castamere, is the big episode. Season 4, 5, you know, those were I think a little bit lower on the pedestal. And then you got a great season this year in season 6. I'll always point to season 1 as one of my favorites, obviously, but this one to me, Josh, creeps up there as well.
It's tough. Okay, how about this? It might be, I don't know. I mean, it's definitely not at the bottom, I'll tell you that. I don't think this season is at the bottom. I don't know if the season is at the top. You know, it's somewhere between 4, maybe number 4, maybe number 3. Because I really like season 1. I really like season 4.
Right.
Maybe this is number 3 if I had to rank them. You know, I would say, if I had to rank them in that case, I would say no, season 3 is my dead last. Yeah, I don't know. Somewhere in the middle, the high middle. How's that?
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, what's your number 1?
Okay, so I would say my number 1. Number 1. I mean, season 1 was really good. You can't. Maybe it's just the nostalgia, even though I'm not a very nostalgic person. But season 1 was really good. So okay, let's just go with. If you want me to rank the seasons, I'll say season 1 is my number 1. Season 4 is my number 2. Let's go ahead and say season 6 this season is my number 3. I'll say season 5 is my number 4. Season 2, I've already lost control. Season 3 is my last one. Season 2 is my second to last one.
Okay, fair enough.
Was that? I don't know if I missed the season.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think season 1's the best because that brings us into the show. I think this one, however, I really dug it. I thought it was a great season, and it could be my second or third amongst all of them. Just to me, this will go down. I think you mentioned this. It will go down as one of the more memorable episodes of the entire series. So. Just as a 10th episode as a whole, it's definitely up there, if not the best, definitely second best.
Can I just wait? Because we're kind of coming off this show on a high, so I think like maybe that's why I'm rating it so high. But can you name for me like 2 or 3 other things that happened this season? Big things?
Hodor.
Okay, that's one. I agree. See, that's my problem. Is that it's very the Hodor thing? Yes,
well, I'm thinking
totally.
of big things. I mean, obviously,
yeah, absolutely. But that's the problem. You can't think of them like boom, boom, boom like that. You know. Whereas like season 2, I could tell you Blackwater, easy. It was huge. You know. Season 3, Red Wedding, huge. You know. This thing with
Danny,
the
Battle of the Bastards. I guess that's the big thing.
Yeah. You know. I'm not trashing the season. I'm just trying to think like. Can you name something from this season that is so good, or are we just ranking it so high because we just saw the episode, you know, an hour ago and it was good, and we're just kind of, you know, living off that high. But once we come down from it and we really have to go into the show, is this a season we're going to say, yes, season 6, that season?
Well,
yeah, it was a good one.
Well, let's touch on that. The favorite moments of the season. I named 2. I think you could even say learning that the reveal that Melisandre is really an older woman. I think that's fair to say. Is one, the resurrection of Jon Snow, albeit not anything crazy. You know, it's that he just comes to life through like Melisandre's spells.
The Return of the Hound, maybe.
Return of the Hound is fair.
Maybe. I mean, it's not really a big moment. It was. I was kind of.
But it was a cold open, so they tried to make it a big moment.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
The Arya stuff I liked.
Nah, the Arya stuff. I think I think we
that
talked
could have
about
been over a long time ago.
It could have been a one-season story that they dragged out over 2 seasons.
I love how they're giving Dany all these emotional moments. We see it with Jorah. We saw it with Dario here.
Did you like the? Not to rehash it, but I thought you weren't a big fan of the Jorah Dany moment at the end.
No, I'm not a fan of either of them.
Right.
What I'm saying is they're giving her these emotional, scenes that we're supposed to feel like very connected, and I just don't buy any of them. I do like the line by Tyrion that he says, "You have to be afraid to fail to be a good leader." I 100%.
Is that what he says?
Yes.
Okay.
I 100% agree with that too, because the Mad King, he said, the Mad King was not afraid to fail, and that's what doomed him in the end.
To me, some of the Tyrion stuff, and some, not just that him, but
they try to make him the good guy. He's the voice of reason.
Right, but it's not even that. Like, when I hear Tyrion sometimes, I'm not hearing a character. I'm hearing the writers in the writers' room go, okay, we want to get him an Emmy. Ooh, let's write a really powerful line that we can show on the Emmy reel. That's what I listen to, because, I mean, it's just like, it sometimes it just comes off so unnatural, some of the things he says. Like, he's not speaking like he would speak. He's speaking like, oh, let me say something big and powerful because I need this on my Emmy reel. That's just the way it is sometimes. I mean, it's the same thing with Cersei. She's been saying, because a lot of people have been saying that, this has been predicted that Cersei keeps saying she's going to burn the city down. She's going to burn the city down. And this season she finally did it, so.
Characters you want to see more of, if we only have 2 more seasons and they're shortened seasons, you want to get the end game for, because we know that it's going to be ice and fire in the end. We know the White Walker, so we can leave them out for a second. But any other mysteries or anybody you're still interested of before the series comes to a close? Right.
I definitely want to see more of Bran. Like I said, this episode, I definitely want to see more of Bran and see where his story ends, because the White Walkers were the first things we saw, but Bran Stark is kind of really almost like the center of the first episode. It kind of opens with him climbing the walls of Winterfell and then him getting pushed off. So Bran Stark is almost like the first human, other than the Night's Watch. Bran Stark is really kind of the first human character we see. So I think Bran Stark is the #1 character. I want more of his story. I think we'll get it. The other character, because you said name 2, Melisandre. I've always liked her character, and it seems like she's got sent off because we're going to bring her back next season. So
no interest in Samwell Tarly. We see it. We didn't even mention it in our 2 hours of talking of him in that gargantuan library, Citadel.
It's kind of weird because with Sam Tarly, it's not that I don't have any interest in seeing him. It's kind of weird because it seems like everyone in this series is converging on King's Landing, Winterfell, the north area, and Sam is going south. So his character is kind of isolated. I mean, we didn't really see a lot of him this season. So he's obviously a big character. They obviously like him on the show. He's going to still be on the show. He'll obviously have a role to play in the end. I'm just not sure where what he's doing. Like, he's going to Old Town to become a maester. Like, dude, the war's up north. You need to be up north doing something.
You think he's the one that tells the people in the South about the White Walkers first?
He could. I think that maybe there could be a situation where Sam is in the libraries and he's the one who finds some spell or something that can defeat the White Walkers, some story, some legend. Maybe he can find some secret lineage. So obviously Sam has a role to play. I'm not sure what. That seems to be the most logical because he has all these books and this information in front of him. So he could find out some information that would help lead to the end game of the show. That seems to be the only thing. But I don't know what they're doing with Sam. Like I said, they're just sending him away. He's not near anyone else. Like Bran converging on Winterfell, Arya converging on Winterfell. Jaime came back to King's Landing. There's stuff going on. Sam just seems so out of it. So I don't really know.
Yeah, but for the first time, we'll get everybody on that same
Continent.
Yeah, so that's
Other than Dario Naharis and Jorah, because we don't know where they are. And I think it's safe to say they'll be back.
Does Jorah die in this series?
Yes. Which, we didn't talk about this, but Dany, when she made Tyrion the Hand of the King, my only thought was, what about Jorah? Jorah's been with you literally since you got this Dothraki army. He was the first person, one of the first people to come up to you and really pledge his allegiance in episode 1. Now, maybe you could say, like, make the argument, oh, well, if Jorah does come back and she really does, they do have this connection, maybe he could be her King's Guard. I don't know, but I just felt it a little weird that Dany is going to give the Hand of the King to someone who she pretty much just met 2 seasons ago, and her most I know her and Jorah kind of had a falling out, but I feel like he's earned her trust back a little bit, and she gives it to Tyrion. I don't know. It seems a little weird, her handing the Hand of the King to Tyrion when she just met him. And even though they had this connection, like, in her mind, is she not thinking at the end of the day, he's still a Lannister. Like, he's a smart guy. Like, maybe this is a plant to get and take me out or something. Like, what, maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
And I know Dany isn't that smart, so maybe she's not thinking that. Maybe that's just how I think. But I don't know. It just seemed a little bit like too fast. Like, again, remember, Dany just met Tyrion last season, right? At the beginning of last season, midway through last season, somewhere around there.
I think you're right.
Midway around through last season. And all of a sudden, she's making him Hand to the King. Now, I know she doesn't have that many loyal people around her. Like, Sir Barristan's dead. But, like, why not? I know Dario Naharis isn't, like, the smart one of it. But I don't know. It just, again, it seems a little – I don't know. I don't know what to say. I'm just word vomiting here.
Well, we've gone really in depth in this episode 610, the season finale, the Winds of Winter. Any parting thoughts before we close it until the next season, albeit probably a shortened season of the Game of Thrones series on HBO?
I'm actually the most excited I've been, even though the end didn't wow me. I'm kind of the most excited I've ever been because I feel like the show is coming to an end, but in a way where it's like they have to finish up the story. Like, they want to give us a satisfying ending. Whereas I felt like 2 seasons ago, if you look back at the videos of this podcast from 2 seasons ago, I wasn't excited because I was like, where's the end? Like, are they wrapping this up? Are they trying to get to something? And I finally feel like they're trying to get to something. The Starks are coming back together. It feels like the story in King's Landing is finally finishing off there. Dany is finally coming over. So the story is ending, which is good, and I want a satisfying ending, and I feel like I'm very excited to see what that ending is to the show, rather than them just stringing the show along because it's so popular, and there are many shows on television, I won't name drop them, Walking Dead, that just draw the show out for ratings, and I'm glad the show isn't doing it, so I'm very excited for the future seasons to see what happens. We know the White Walkers are coming, we know the dragons are coming, we know there's going to be these great battles, but to finally see them maybe come to fruition, and I feel like there's going to be some more surprises along the way. This is going to be an exciting however many episodes we have left.
Yeah, and if there's only 6 in each part, say it's an A-B setup and there's only 6, 7, they can't of course they're not wasting episodes, but they can't have, nothing substantial happen in a particular episode when they have
they can't have a whole episode devoted to Gendry.
Right. Which we don't know where he is right now.
He's somewhere rowing. He's rowing. He's rowing across the narrow sea. He doesn't have the fast pass that Arya and Varys have.
Well, whatever they have, I definitely want. All right, Josh, that's going to do it for 610 Winds of Winter, Essos2Westeros. Another season is in the books. Our longest episode, I believe, to date. Great job as always tonight with your pinpoint analysis.
Good job to you. Do we have any sponsors to finish off with? I'm just wondering.
Yes, we got to take care of our sponsors and pay the bills. Of course, we have to thank, as always, this podcast delivered by UPS. What can Brown do for you? For the best filet mignons in the land, visit Capital Grill at capitalgrill.com. And Josh's favorite, for the best chicken fingers in Central Florida, visit Huey Magoo's at a gas station near you. Josh, awesome job this season. Before we say goodbye, give the people one show something to watch from this time from now up until next season of Game of Thrones.
That's easy. The Leftovers coming to HBO. We don't know when, but they've been filming the series, and that's also going to be its final season. But another HBO show, The Leftovers, if you're not watching it,
you have time to catch up.
Yeah, you have time to catch up. It's only 2 seasons. The 3rd season's going, and it's going to be, I mean, come on. It's the best show on television. Sorry, Game of Thrones.
Well, I second that, and some may say Game of Thrones is better than The Leftovers. I know that won't come.
It's different. It's different. It's a different kind of show.
Different type of show, different topic for another time. Well, that's going to do it, ladies and gentlemen, for this long edition of Essos2Westeros, as Josh and I just dissected 6-10 Winds of Winter. We will see you next season. We don't know how many episodes it will be, but when it does come out, Josh and I will likely be back as long as Josh wants to do it.
Yes.
And we'll leave it at that. All right, folks, thanks so much for watching, and we'll talk to you for Season 7 of Game of Thrones. Take care.